Hey, Shalom, all praise unto Yahweh Shemi Al Shai, the one is the apostle, the great millstone. I know you brothers will be pushing this truth in sincerity throughout the four corners of the earth. So I'm gonna do a quick video right now, relatively quick video, and this is dealing with the debt ceiling and the different things that can occur. Because right now, at the minute, if you see this article, for instance, okay, you can see rating agencies warn of failure of U.S. Debt limits, okay, and you can see the 14 trillion. If you go on the U.S. debt what's it called, debt clock, then you got some of those things that are obligations, and some of those are being paid or whatever. Fact of the matter is, as you're gonna see within these different articles, you're spending way more than you're bringing in. Okay, and that goes to the spirit. That speaks a lot about the spirit of the world we're living in right now. Okay, the world we're living in right now is a consumer type lifestyle. Okay, and as the ruler is, so are the people. So you got a lot of people out there. They live on the debt. What they don't understand is their debt is accumulated. Okay, so it's added on to the whole national debt of the whole nation. Right. So, for instance, housing, mortgages, and all of that, they're lumped up into one bag of what's known as securities, and they're sold off onto these different countries. As a matter of fact, I believe a lot of China's bought a lot of those so-called securities, which they're not securities, because what they're banking on is those people, those different people that have borrowed more money than they can afford on paying that off. Okay, so for instance, if you borrowed a certain amount of securities, or you bought a certain amount of securities, and you wanted to you wanted to go into business with those securities, then what you would say is, okay, in 5 years amount of time, okay, these securities are gonna make me this much, because obviously these people are gonna pay. But as you saw within the 2008 crash, when those people stop paying, well, more people stop paying. That's why it's called. That's why when you have inflation, it's cyclic. Okay, is it inflation or deflation? I forget which one. Okay, all of them systems are cyclic. In other words, people have less money, therefore they have less money. Okay, to put it into layman's terms, when you have a situation where a major company within a city shuts down, well, you got less spending, people less spending less money, okay? And the money that they spend is gonna mean that when they go to that Costa and they don't go to it anymore and they don't spend money there, well, the person that was working there don't get a paycheck. So you have a whole cycle of deprivation. In fact, I believe that's a term in geography, a cycle of deprivation, where you go to where people are just going in cycles and cycles and cycles of getting poorer and poorer. And that's what you're gonna see out there within the shores of America, okay? But let's go into this video. It says here, the debt ceiling explained. I wanted to go into this first before I touch on these other different articles, because there's no point just blabbing on about things that, well, I barely understand, and probably even fewer people may understand yet. So let's go into the explanation first, and then we'll build on that. So it says U.S. national debt and the debt to GDP ratio. Okay, so you can see on the axis. Okay, you got the what is it? Debt on the left hand side. Okay, GDP on the other side, and they're showing you a ratio of that, and you can see that the GDP to debt level has increased on the side of debt. In other words, you're getting to the point where you will have to make 110% or 100% more so relative to the debt that you owe, right, to pay off. Okay, and they've done mathematical. I don't know if that's what this graph is showing you, but I know pretty much with that amount of debt, 14 trillion. Okay, the GDP is not going to be enough to pay that back, and that's with before you account for people using their own money. That's just if everyone who's making money just gave their money into paying off that debt. Okay, so it says the United States spends more than it brings in, forcing us to borrow money and to take on debt. Okay, where do they get that debt from? The elite banking families. Why do they do it in such a way? Because when they do crash, whether it's going to be this debt ceiling that's going to crash the United States and ergo the whole entirety of the world. Okay, because the whole world's economy goes off of that U.S. The U.S. dollar bill reserve currency. Okay, whether that's an eventuality in Lord's will, it is, because the sooner the sooner, let's just face it. Okay, everyone here wants to be a soldier, but the fact of the matter is, the sooner this place gets done away with, the better off you're gonna be, man. The better off you're gonna be at everything that you desire doing. So this, to hell with this society. But the fact, but getting back onto this, okay, you got what's known as the world reserve currency, and when this world reserve currency fails, well, every other economy is gonna fail. Okay, when you got these so-called governing bodies of this economy, this global economy, this globally intertwined economy, okay, and those governing bodies are reliant upon the American dollar. Well, guess what? When the American dollar crashes, which we've been saying for the longest is going to crash, because that's part of the money side of things is a major part of this thing, man. The military, the money, okay, the religion, okay. At the end of it, okay, the religion of Esau's hegemony is going to manifest itself. So the first two things that's going to happen is him crashing the economy. Then obviously you're going to have the wars, World War III's and that. But he wants to have it to where you have a unified Messiah, which is really Satan, that he's going to bring about on the stage, so he can bring about his so-called world war. Okay, I believe the word, the name Lord Major comes into it, but I haven't been into that information in a little while, so you're gonna have to do your own research on that. Okay, so part of the financial side of these things is he wants to crash this economy. Okay, so when you understand how this whole debt system works and you're spending more than you make, and etc., 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 you pretty much can mathematically map out when this crash is gonna happen. Okay, and what you find out is it's pretty much supposed to have already happened. Okay, you're circling the drain and it's supposed to have already crashed, but you got this reserve currency that makes it to where other people, your debt, your overspending is spread out throughout the four corners of the earth. Okay, so you're staggering. Okay, you're like a drunken man staggering. Okay, before he falls. Okay, but you're gonna fall, man. So let's read this. So it says that Congress sets an amount, okay, a limit on how much debt we can hold before we have to stop borrowing. Okay, so that's a debt ceiling. So this is the point where we have to stop borrowing. Okay, and it says so let's go to the first statement. So let's cross reference with the first statement. So it says the U.S. spends more than it brings in, and it goes into the next statement where it says the Congress has to set a limit upon the debt which we can hold before it stops borrowing. But how are you gonna stop it? Okay, you're spending more than you're spending more than you bring in. So you're gonna have it to where the debt ceiling is gonna have to be raised. But even just the mere talk of the debt ceiling is gonna bring about calamities. Okay, reduced credit ratings and so on and so forth. In fact, when you go into the scripture talks about how pretty much before this thing comes out, okay, how the Most High was gonna have I try to remember the words now. Okay, the Most High was going to have the grinding season, all of these different things that was going to be the chipping away of your empire. But ultimately, we know you're going to default, man. Okay, so it says Congress can choose to raise the debt ceiling, right, when we reach it, and has 78 times in the last 57 years. So pretty much they've been doing it nearly twice a year. They've been raising the debt ceiling for the last 57 years. That's why we say, when they're talking about America being great again, they're going back a hell of a long time when Jake was in oppression, okay, 50, 60, 70 years ago, all right, when they was at their prime, okay? It says Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, not how to pronounce that name, has asked Congress to raise the debt ceiling by the end of July. All right, and this is written on May the 2017. So the different articles I'm going to bring out later on, they're going to be relevant to this. But this whole thing has been going around the pipe for a little while. But the other articles those are like 2 days old. Okay. So they've been wanting this debt ceiling to raise up. So what we saying here? We're saying a poor man who spends more than he earns, okay, has got a credit card, and that credit card's got a limit on it. Okay, and what you're gonna do is you're gonna have it to where the bank manager is gonna increase that's what you want. You want the bank manager to increase, okay, the limit on that. How's that going to be beneficial to the person that's actually spending? It ain't going to be beneficial. You're just going to cripple yourself up until the point you need a new system, okay, that's going to replace the old system of overspending. And that's going to be the chip. See, they're going to blame this whole thing of overconsumption on the populace, the people. Because the people want to go on holidays. They want to overspend. They want to live the life that they see on the TV. And as a result, they have put the whole country into a whole indebtment. Okay? And as a solution, the elite banking family is going to say, okay, here's your ration. Here's your chip. You're going to have this. You can't go beyond that. Okay? So it says, so, it goes into the different things. So let's go into, is raising the debt ceiling a bad thing? It says currently the government has 19 trillion. No, of course it is. If you got a credit card limit that's at 5,000 and you've overspent and you have to raise that limit up, then you're in a bad state. Okay, so it says that currently the government has 19 trillion, 20 trillion of debt to give you a little context. That's enough money to buy everyone, to buy every single American a brand new Porsche. Let's put that into perspective. Okay, every single individual out there within America can have a new Porsche. All right, by the amount that the government, by their numbers, but by the amount the government owns. Okay, so let's say a Porsche is, I don't know, 40,000. Okay, what American do you know just got 40,000 just lying around there? In other words, you ain't gonna be able to pay this back because you ain't even got the money now. Okay, it says while economists debate the level at which debt is acceptable, there is no question our ballooning debt is indicative of America's largest struggle to address long-term problems, with no easy solution. But here's the thing: while raising the debt ceiling sounds irresponsible, it's actually not ceiling that's the issue. Okay, Congress have already voted to spend money we don't have, and failure to raise the debt ceiling will reverse spending, all right, or rein in new debt. Right, choosing not to raise the debt ceiling is like choosing not to pay a credit card bill. Right, fiscal responsibilities start with a plan. Right, political spending, etc., for bringing federal budgets into balance. Right, so if raising the debt ceiling isn't the main problem, why do politicians keep making a big deal about it? Okay, for one, it's symbolic of our increased federal problem, of which you're talking about these different federations. They're private corporations, man, right, set up to run you into debt, okay, into problems. Okay, the idea that we're constantly spiraling deeper into debt is something that most Americans have adverse reactions to for good reasons. Politicians know that too. Raising the debt ceiling sounds like Congress is enabling wasteful spending. All right, even if Congress is really agreeing to pay for bills already owing on the federal government's credit cards. In other words, when they're talking about raising the ceiling, they already agreed they're going to build X amount of schools, hospitals, etc., etc., etc. Okay, it also makes for great leverage. Right, failure to raise the debt ceiling, right, could be have drastic consequences. But what you're saying is we're going to accept more debt and more debt. There's going to come a point where you can't take on anymore. You're already beyond the point where you can't pay it off. All right. What would happen if they didn't? Okay, terrible, right? No good, very bad things. Okay, what the protest is. So it goes on. You can read the rest for yourself. So now let's read now the because if I read all of these things, man, I'll be here for days. Okay, so let's go into now the current news. So this is published on. When is this been published on? This is recent. I think, where's it got the date? It got the date stamp somewhere. All right. I think this was a handful of days ago. So it says, rating agencies warn on failure to raise the U.S. debt ceilings. And we know pretty much, I believe they're probably going to raise it up, because if they raised it 78 times in the last 57 years, what are they going to do? They're just going to go back to what they already know how to do. They're going to raise it up. Credit rating agencies have retched up their warnings over the consequences should a divided Washington failed to raise U.S. debt ceilings. And remember what they said in the other articles. They said if they already agreed to spend a certain amount of money, right, on different projects, okay, now they're just saying whether they're going to actually increase the spending budget to where they can fulfill those different financial obligations. It's like using up the water, okay, and deciding whether you should pay the water bill. That's what it's like. It says S&P Global, okay, the largest of the world's three dominant rating agencies, cautions that the failure by Congress to lift up the debt ceiling would likely be more catastrophic than the collapse of Lehman Brothers in 2008. Now, personally, like I said, judging on history, they're probably going to raise that. But if they don't, well, that's going to be beautiful. I'll drink to that. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Okay, so it says U.S. default causes and consequences. Will the United States ever default on its debt? It says in 2013, Congress threatened to not raise up the debt ceiling unless the president come back on spending, Obamacare, etc., etc. But these are all bills, in one way or another. I believe I think Congress has to pass on them or something like that. In other words, they've agreed to spend this money, but now they're arguing whether they should spend this money. Okay, like we saw in the first example. Okay, but I mean, like I said before, I don't really sometimes how these bills are passed, whether it's an executive order. I think executive order omits Congress, and sometimes Congress has to agree whether they're gonna be a part of it or whatever. Okay, so it says at the last minute, Congress agreed to raise up the debt ceiling, but the damage was already done. So even in just saying we're not going to raise up the debt ceiling, as we're seeing right now, like this article has been posted on the 15th of August, 5 days ago. No, 5 days ago. We're talking about 15 days ago, right? 2017. So what they've done up until this point, after let me research that really quickly. U.S. Debt ceiling, and see what's come out of that. Okay, so let's see if anything recent's come out. So U.S. debt ceiling 22. Okay, so looming debt ceiling deadlines pushing U.S. Fund managers to cash. Right, gold price surges to 1,320, attracts investors as U.S. debt ceiling is, it's in the works. So judging by that, this whole thing is still in the works. So let's go back to this. So what is the debt? What is debt default? So basically, when you ain't capable of paying off, and they're saying, hey, even the threat of debt default is bad. Let me read this quickly because this could be important. It says there are two scenarios under which the United States would default on its debt. This would happen if Congress didn't raise the debt ceiling. Okay, and former Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner in 2011 to Congress outlined this: what would happen. Interest rates will raise, right? Since Treasuries represent the benchmark borrowing rate for all bonds. Okay, this means increased costs for corporations, state and local government, mortgages, and consumer loans. Okay, that will spiral the whole global economy into bad news, man. Okay, the dollar would drop. Foreign investors, right, would flee into safe havens, pretty much. Right, the U.S. government would not be able to pay salaries or benefits for federal or military personnel, retirees, etc., etc. Even the threat of default is bad. We've read that before. How would a debt default impact businesses? Would you expect? Okay, it will lead into another recession, like it says over there. Okay, how can the United States government avoid the default? Okay, it says the surest way to avoid the default is to prevent budget deficits, okay, that lead to debt. Okay, that seems obvious, but lo and behold, we're in a situation that we're in of 20 odd trillion pounds worth of debt. That's not an accident. 20 trillion is not an accident. Those are numbers that are inconceivable. People don't even understand what 20 trillion means. Okay. People don't even understand that. That's just like Madden. You kill 100 people in one day. You don't even really feel, it's nothing. Okay? So it says, not Madden, sorry, Call of Duty. I mean, I'm not gamer or anything like that, so I don't really know these things. So it says the federal government must raise revenue through taxes or cut spending. But hold on a minute. You already exceeded your GDP. How are you going to tax everybody beyond what they make for you to be able to pay that off? However, now the debt is nearly 100% of the GDP. So they're saying that now, and we saw that in that graph, it's nearly 100% of the GDP. All right, and it will be difficult to cut spending enough to reduce the risk of debt and the risk of default. The other option is not to allow the dollar to depreciate enough to make the debt worth less to foreign debt holders like China and Japan. I mentioned that. So in other words, to keep the dollar stronger than these currencies, okay, will have a certain amount of impact. All right, a beneficial impact on the United States, so that these people that have foreign currencies, okay, right, will have less weight for that debt that they've bought. It says the Federal Reserve is doing this by monetizing the debt. This means it's buying treasuries with credit. It creates itself. Right, defaults can be avoided if the Fed doesn't require the interest to be repaid. Okay, so so you can read that again for yourself. So let me finish up on this. So so that says what happens if it defaults, and we gone into a little bit of that. So I mean, hopefully that was of edification. I'm trying to go through it as quickly as possible because you can switch off with these things. Okay, so that's what's happening out there with this debt thing. This is the consequences that could happen as a result. You can see that defaulting is becoming more and more being pushed out there. Okay, so with that, hopefully that was of edification. All praise unto Yahweh Shem Shai. Double honestly, apostles, great millstone, and Lord's will. I'll see you on the next one. Shalom.